So on Dante, just real quick, something that I've noticed just now. I've been going through the Italian. These are supposed to be 11-syllable lines. This man drops syllables like flies. It is wild.
Well, because he's not trying to do the terza he is, well, especially when you're dealing with Longfellow, you are trying to deal with somebody who is trying to fit it within the
No,
language.
no, I'm talking about Dante himself, the Italian.
He's talking about the Italian.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
like,
no!
Here's
like
The syllable in that case is because this was meant to be spoken. That's meant to be a pause thrown in there, like essentially a dramatic
Or there might be a
pause.
no,
diphthong.
no,
There
I'm
might
saying.
be
So in line 16, properly pronounced, it's 14 syllables. Gli occhi adorabili, la barba un teatra.
So I can tell you this. I don't know with Dante specifically, but I do know, teaching Shakespeare for as long as I have, that whenever he breaks meter, that generally means something. It calls attention to what's going on in that line because he's doing something. In this case, he's breaking iambic pentameter, right? He might like throw a couple of trochees in there, or a spondy or something. And so what that does is it sort of breaks the meter, there's usually some sort of new action happening or some sort of transition or something that the poet wants to call your attention to. And I understand how that works in Elizabethan era English poetry. I do not understand how that works in Italian.
The other thing to think about is
But it may be that.
Well, one of the things that Ancom said that we need to take into account. We are now live. I have clicked live, because we started to get on Dante. Is it could he said properly pronounced?
Yes.
Regionally or colloquially pronounced to Dante, it may have actually only had 11 because of the way we shorten words within
Can you say line 14?
Line 16. It was line 16 of Canto 6. It's basically just describing Kerberos. He's saying with red eyes and a greasy black beard would be a more modern translation.
So if you're hearing the same meter over and over and over again, and all of a sudden you hear something that doesn't fit the meter, that draws your attention. So there might be something special about what's being described here. This is Cerberus.
Yeah, that's the thing is I was looking for something special in this, and starting from the prior tercet, he's just describing Kerberos, and the fact that his eyes are red and his beard is a greasy black. Doesn't seem particularly significant within, this is a common understanding of the appearance of Kerberos.
So how many beats are in line 16? Stressed syllables. How many beats?
Gli occhi vermilli, la barba un teatra.
So
6?
4?
No.
6.
Gli occhi vermilli, la barba un teatra. So 6.
So
6 stress syllables.
Oak is a stress, and then there's not another stress until meek. So it's 1, 2, 3 unstressed syllables in a row.
Well, no, because they are gli occhi vermilli.
Right. So oak, and then the next syllables are e, a, ver, and they're all unstressed. So I wonder if when spoken,
is stressed. Gli occhi vermilli.
Okay. I only spoke Italian for like half a year when I was living there. But to me, it seems like you could skip over the pretty easily. And I don't know if this works in Italian.
Okay, yeah.
But in English,
that could work.
if you have 3 unstressed syllables in a row, sometimes a poet will consider that one syllable, one unstressed syllable, and then pronounce ver all in one go.
I may be forcing to be stressed because I'm stuck on the iambic meter.
Yeah.
So
It's a guess for me, but I wonder what. Let me look up tertiarima and see what the rules are. I forgot.
Okay, but the reason they could be drawing attention to this, so we haven't actually gotten to this line for those who are joining us.
Jack,
we just started. What's up?
We have no video. We have blank screens on YouTube.
Oh,
yeah, it's because I'm on a different thing right now, looking up something that we're talking about. It could be trying to draw a parallel between Kerberos and a particular Florentine nobleman who was known as the Count of the Black Beard,
Okay.
colloquially in the time period, but that is just a cursory Google search of Blackbeard and Italian nobility in 1320s to or early 1300s. So it could be referring to somebody in Florentine nobility, and he's trying to draw a parallel to say this is the living, Kerberos as well. So there's other ways to look at that, at least according to a cursory Google search.
Okay, let me
It did
just say
seem a
that-
little. It did seem a little odd that you would refer to a dog as having a beard. So.
Yeah.
Well, but but Kerberos is referred to as having a beard in the ancient mythology too, so that's not.
Oh, is he? I didn't realize.
Okay, go on, Rich.
I was just going to say, Sayers is trying to do terza on her end. So we can look at what that line says there. And it's 5 beats. It's bloodshot crimson and his bearded jowls. So and it's also all it's all trochees. So this is trochaic pentameter. That line is trochaic pentameter.
So what are we doing? What are we using today for the reading?
Oh,
Because we've used like 4 different things.
I'm going to keep making the Miros. We're still using Longfellow. I'm going to bring it up here in a second in here with us.
Okay.
Just because I started streaming before we started getting to that, so I was just going to...
I'm on the spreadsheet, but I can stick to the Longfellow column, so I see what you guys see.
And this time, because there was not a mistake in the printing of Sayers, I was able to get all of the tercet numbers on Sayers' side, so it's going to be easy to line everything up. And the way I have it set up on Miro, it is broke visually to the points where they need to be, and then the one point where I couldn't because they actually change font print size or scan angle of one particular page, and the font starts to like get really small. I have to actually jump it apart here. Hold on, I forgot to share it. Share.
FYI, I color coded the spreadsheet by circle, so it's getting darker with each circle.
Okay, get down, cat. When we get to tercet, what's this? 38? No, 40. Sorry, that's 58. This particular area, it got so small that the print started to actually distort. So I had to separate it because this line lines up here, next line lines up here, and if I tried to cram it together, it would have looked weird. But everything does actually end up lining up by the end, so we do have the ability to read it, and I can zoom into any level of granularity and be okay for it because of the way I have this set up. So, now, before we get into the reading, to finish what we were talking about, what is it, Polina? Yes, Kerberos is described as being bearded because in the ancient mythology they will talk about his saliva slathering through his beard as he sleeps. So now this would basically be attributed there's certain shepherd dogs, smaller terrier type shepherd dogs that end up having that wiry beard come off the bottom of their chin. In my opinion, that's all they're talking about. They're not meaning he has the equivalent of a human beard. It is that they're talking about the wispy wiry chin whiskers that some canines have.
I gotcha. Okay.
And that would make sense considering Kerberos is fucking supposed to be weird, and this would be them describing a dog from the desert as they're in the middle of Greece.
If he's supposed to be weird, I say he has a full beard.
I mean, we're talking
I
a
say his
mythological
beard.
animal.
I say his beard puts riches to shame.
Oh, it must.
Well, yeah, he's got 3 of them.
Beard, right?
Well, no, I mean, here's the thing. Even if it was just as magnificent as riches, he's got 3 of them.
Yeah.
And all of them are 3 different colors. One's blonde, one's brunette, the other's a redhead.
Oh God, no! You're not. Now you're trying
just
to
saying
make
it
me
right now.
bipolar.
So if does this make him a what is it? Is it terriers that have beards?
Terriers and certain shepherds.
It's hard to imagine him being a terrier though.
Well, it's hard to imagine him, period, because of the way he's described
Or
in the ancient
schnauzer.
mythology. Because the ancient mythology doesn't describe an actual dog. If you talk about the way it talks about his snout and all this, it basically, not incorrectly taxonomically, mind you, but they wouldn't have known this. They essentially make him look like a fucking bear.
So Cerberus is a what is it? A biblically accurate angel. It's okay.
Well, no. What I was going to say is they basically make him look like one of his
Has fewer
ancestors.
eyeballs than an angel though.
It is actually worth noting in the earliest
Only 6
descriptions of Kerberos, he was given between 50 and 100 heads.
Yeah, like
I mean,
A lot of beards.
Is
a lot of
Cerberus
beards.
really a dog? I mean, he makes dog-like sounds.
no, he's
but-
a mythological creature. But what I'm saying is that the original descriptions beyond the number of heads, he had a shorter snout. He was more described like a giant fucking multi-headed bear than a multi-headed dog. Now, dogs and bears are related, so it's an easy jump to make. But at the same time, like, what fucking dog that we have today outside of, like, a chow looks like a bear?
A pug. That's what it is. It's a 150-headed pug.
Yeah.
With beards.
I have a one-headed pug we can bring,
Scale it up.
bring in
You
for
can make it any
example.
dog, and it'll be scary.
No, he was described as a...
Terrifying.
So the earliest description that we still have of Kerberos is by Hesiod from his Theogony. He was described as the Hound of Hades.
No, I'm not saying it wasn't described as a dog, but physical description. Like, once you say he's beyond the hound, the short snout, the big nose, like, the way he's physically described, he's described more like a bear than a dog.
So is he related to the she-wolf?
Actually, the way I always read this,
Dogs come
because
from wolves?
they do, but the way I always read the she-wolf, and this is because of my knowledge of Roman
Are wolves
mythology.
canines?
Yes. Canis lupus.
Girl.
Yep.
The wolf that I always thought Dante is referring to here is Luna, which is the wolf that raised Romulus and Remus. Being in Italy, I always took this as a second layer of insight as to talking about Rome.
Oh, that's a good point. Is Cerberus's gender ever mentioned?
In this, I don't know.
me
It
just
says
take a
his
look
eyes
here.
are red, so it can't be that. He wouldn't be able to produce milk.
Yeah, in
Now, Cerberus were-
Theogony...
If Cerberus were a bitch, she'd have,
No.
I
The
guess,
she-wolf
3
is
times as
Luna.
many nipples.
Not
which would be-
Cerberus is not Cerberus is Rome. She-wolf is Rome.
Oh,
She-wolf is Luna, who raised Romulus and Remus. Remus raised Rome, so on and so forth.
oh, well, then when we get to Romulus and Remus, surely that'll be mentioned, right? Like,
I think it'll be
presume-
alluded to again with the wolf. Yes.
Yeah, maybe we can find something that about that there.
Well, that's always how I read it because of knowing Roman history and Roman mythology about their own formation. That laterally translated through Italy through the Enlightenment and Renaissance period. So, like, this doesn't leave Italian culture predominantly until the 1700s. So this would have been all of Dante's life. Luna would have been associated with Romulus and Remus and the mythological formation of Rome.
And also, like, Rome is mentioned sort of like in negative terms in Canto I, right? Like,
Which is why I also attributed it, because she's also the meager wolf who always eats and is hungry. What did Rome do? Was constantly expanding, was always hungry, but was always considered meager because they always wanted more in the eyes of their nobility. As great as Rome was, it wasn't great enough in the eyes of their nobility, which was what led to the fall of Rome, so on and so forth. And Dante would have, and at least this is not from any of the information that he would not have had access to. This is absolutely within what he should have been educated in the time. So if he didn't know that, it would surprise the living bejesus out of me. It'd be like Rich not knowing fucking LD debate style, like as a debate coach. It would just surprise the shit out of me. It just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, and also like I'm going back to Canto 1, and the tercet is I was born somewhat late sub Julio and lived in Rome when good Augustus reigned. So Augustus is good, but then it says when still the false and lying gods were worshipped. So Rome is kind of like both complimented and like it's backhanded compliment, right? So I can see if you have that opinion of Rome, and then politically, these are his criticisms of Rome as it is in his day, putting the current pope plus the two prior popes in hell. I would imply he doesn't really. He's got a bias against Rome. I would expect. So I can see the she-wolf being the source of Rome.
Well, and slightly possible correction, at least definite different interpretation of it. The way I can view that is they are viewing it. Oh shit.
You cut off for a second there. Would you say that again?
Yeah, I heard a noise. I had to make sure there wasn't something going on in my house.
Yeah, but what did you say?
Where was I? Sorry, I heard something in my house. I lost my track.
No, before that.
I know I lost my place because I heard something. Where was I? Sorry. What was I saying just before then? Because I lost my place when I heard the noise in my house. I'm the only one awake right now, so when I hear a noise...
Anybody remember what he said?
I'm sorry.
Talking about, we were talking about the formation of Rome, and he said good Augustus. If he's talking about Augustus Octavio, that, in my opinion, is also a double feint, because Augustus was not viewed as a particularly good Caesar. He was viewed as kind of mad.
Yeah, Dante seems to like him.
No, but it could be a double feint. No, but it could be a double feint. It could be like that. Oh, great Augustus, and that's I'm just pointing it out because he wasn't viewed historically well. If Dante views him well, I don't know why. It could be, but
why
it could
do you
be
say
both.
he's not viewed historically well? He's considered the greatest of the Caesars.
Because by much of Italy, he was actually viewed as a tyrant trying to win Julius's war after Julius's death. He damn near bankrupted the empire multiple times in the process of that war.
I'm not sure that's Dante's point of view, but we will get to him. Like, we will find him.
No, I'm saying it could be. I'm saying you could be right, I could be right, because it could be either, because it depends on Dante's bent, and I wouldn't know why he views him as great in that time period. Go ahead, after this, 1 second. Because I'm almost done. I don't know why he would view it one way or the other in the 1300s. Go on, Desmond.
But I was just gonna say, Dante's still a little bit salty from getting kicked out by what is it, the black Gelflings? Is that the ones that kicked him out?
The black Guelphs, yeah.
Yeah,
because he's one of the whites. So it's weird. The Guelphs are pro-papacy, or pro-Vatican, and the Ghibellines were, I guess, anti-Vatican, like for the kings or whatever. But then the Guelphs themselves split. So it's sort of like
black and the white Guelphs.
Imagine being a moderate Republican and the blacks are MAGA.
Yeah. No,
the Pope supported the blacks, and so the whites had been driven into exile.
Yeah, but the blacks, it was a French prince, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember his name, that came in to the city and was the person that basically infiltrated to bring in the black Guelphs to kick out the white Guelphs. Yeah, and that's mentioned. Musa has a note on that, on who that is, and we looked it up last night.
It's a particular Verona leader.
Yeah, I forget.
He's the ruler of Verona.
Yeah,
I just can't remember his name.
I can't
but
either.
It
started
somewhere.
with a C. That's all I got because we talked about a lot of shit last night. But like, it could be either. It's something to think about because to me, like, it depends on how he viewed it. And when you're talking about, by the way, the reason I was grinning that whole time, I spent way too much time with you fucking degenerates in Twitch poll. I was thinking about the clippable moment we just did of what we were saying out of context before we started adding Guelph and Gelf back in there.
Okay, his name is Congrande della Scala.
Congrande della Scala.
That's what it is, Congrande della Scala. And this is not known. This is just Musa's opinion on who it is. And apparently a lot of other scholars think that it's him as well. But it's not, like, verified. Like, there's no way to know.
Well, and that's fair. Now, we're about 10 minutes longer than we normally do. We will get started on the reading. Just 1 second. One thing I did want to ask you about, Rich, is when we were getting through last week, there was something you said you wanted to look up about the last tercet in Canto 5. Did you ever figure out what it was that you wanted to
Let me look it
week?
up. The last,
Because
one of the two spirits worked these words. The other wept in such a way that pity blurred my senses. I swooned as though to die.
You just said something about there was something in there you wanted to look up for this week. I just want to make sure we don't.
I just wanted to know who Galahad was. I don't know Galahad. I thought that was Galahad, but apparently it's not. Apparently it's somebody else.
I would say it's someone that didn't have enough prudence.
Yes. But I've got a link to him now. I put a link to him.
Well, I just wanted to make sure before we actually got to the reading, because I remembered that you had said something about it when we finished last week.
Well, if Eucharist pops in, I definitely want to take him straight to that question.
Actually,
About.
let me actually ping him because I know he's busy, but just in case he's awake.
Yeah, he's moving. Like I totally understand.
No, I do too. But just in case he's awakened by the computer.
So those of you who are in the spreadsheet, you'll see the color change every time we move into a new circle. I think it makes it a little bit more intuitive.
Okay, so I just messaged Eucharist just in case he's by the computer. I understand if he's not, because I mean, real life comes first, obviously. It's just one of those things. If we can get him, it'd be great. That was the last thing that I had marked down that we needed to go over because you had said something about it last week. Since it's immaterial at this point, we can move on. Who would like to start the reading? I'm going to be honest, the person who takes these first fucking tercets, I'm sorry, they suck in fucking Longfellow to try and say out loud. They do not flow
I'll be
off,
fine with it.
They don't flow off the tongue well.
I'll be fine with
What I
it.
like about Musa.
Alright,
At the return of consciousness that closed before the pity of those two relations which utterly with sadness had confused me, new torments I behold, and new tormented, around me whichsoever way I move, and whichsoever way I turn and gaze. In the third circle am I of the rain, eternal, maledict, and cold and heavy, its law and quality are never new. Huge hail, and water somber hued, and snow, athwart the tenebrous air poured down amain. Noisome the earth is that receiveth this. Kerberus monster cruel and uncouth, with his three gullets like a dog is barking, over the people that are there submerged. Red eyes he has, an unctuous beard and black, and belly large, and armed with claws his hands. He rends the spirits, flays and quarters them. Howl the rain maketh them like unto dogs. One side they make a shelter for the other, oft turn themselves the wretched reprobates. When Kerberus perceived us, the great worm, his mouth he opened and displayed his tusks. Not a limb had he that was motionless. And my conductor, with his spans extended, took of the earth, and with fists well filled, he threw it into those rapacious gullets. Such as that dog is, who by barking craves, and quiet grows soon as his food he gnaws. For to devour it he but thinks and struggles. The like became those muzzles filth begrimed of Kerberus the demon who so thunders over the souls, that they would fain be deaf. I feel like that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, you went 3 tercets further than I did just because
Oh.
of the simple fact. No, it's fine. The reason I stopped where I did is it was a natural break in the flow. Yours works too.
Yeah, I felt like this was a better break in the flow just because you either like you would stop it when he sees Kerberos rather than like
you're fine.
allowing him to finish the description of Kerberos.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a complaint. I just had to actually move the page. I was like, oh shit, hold on.
Oh, fair enough.
Can we talk for a second about pronunciation for that piece?
Oh, Kerberos.
Because when you say Kerberos, that is correct in the Greek,
Yes.
which is the source material. In Italian, it would be Cerberus, right?
Well, let me look at
I
the
think
word
that
he's
would
actually using.
And furthermore, that would be and this would
It's
be
C followed by an E, right, with no H.
well,
So
but now
like,
it'd
I
be
wonder how he
regionally
would pronounce
dialect
it.
specific. Yeah, this would be regionally
Actually, a
dialect
good
specific.
question. Let me take a look.
Yeah, what's the Florentine pronunciation? Because that's what he'd be using.
Yep.
Because it might be Cerberus in Italian.
Pronunciation.
But that doesn't mean. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think. I think both pronunciations are valid. I'm just curious as to, like,
Yeah.
would he be pronouncing it the way Italians would, or would he be using the Greek pronunciation?
So no, the
he doesn't know
Italian
Greek.
here.
Yeah, he
He
doesn't.
doesn't know
The
Greek.
Italian. Yeah, the Italian here is Cerbero.
So it is a CH.
So yeah.
And the Latin is Cerberus, I believe.
Yeah, it is. See, for me, it all depends on how you're exposed to him first, how you pronounce him, and I don't care.
I don't
'cause
think he would go
technically
back to
all
the
of them
Greek
are-
because they didn't know Greek.
Oh,
So I think he would either say Cerberus or Cerberus.
Well, yeah, but
Also,
but for that,
classical-
it doesn't-
Also, given how he spelled it.
classical Latin also uses a hard K sound. Cerberus.
yeah, but then it
Yeah,
becomes
but I'm talking
canner
about
instead of cur.
church Latin.
Yeah, Cerberus. And then in the English, we do Cerberus, which I hate because we converted a lot of
Well, we
Latin
do that because of
into
church Latin. Yeah. Church
Yeah,
Latin.
And we do that
vague
because of
pronunciation.
and we do that because of Ceaseless, which is what he got attributed to very incorrectly by a bunch of scholars who didn't know any better, or scribes who didn't know any better. Because
I don't know.
So he got pronounced like the goddess Ceres, where we get cereal.
The Japanese for the name is pretty weird.
What's that?
Oh,
Keruberus.
that actually makes sense.
Yeah, like with the way that you guys pronounce like non-Japanese words, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, honestly, that seems perfectly consistent with all of the terms that Japanese has borrowed from other languages. Like they tend to just make it fit syllabically as well as possible. Which, because my understanding of Japanese syllables is they all have both a consonant and a vowel sound, so that's why you get a lot of added vowel sounds.
Here's the thing: Japanese does not care about your spelling.
Yeah,
Just as long as the spelling matches the Japanese spelling, that's what the pronunciation's going to be.
yeah.
It doesn't matter.
So
Yeah.
I
But
just opened up
just-
side chat. I just opened up
Xerxes
side
is a strictly Roman name, right? Like the Greek name is Demeter.
Yeah.
So there's really no way to know if Kappa or Chi would be the first letter in that name.
Well, yeah. Well, my thing is, it didn't. The reason I thought I didn't really focus on this as much when we were going over it because it doesn't change the meter. It didn't matter which way we pronounced it. For me, it's just how you're exposed to it first is generally how you end up pronouncing it.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody should change their pronunciation that they are used to. I just think it's interesting that there's 3 different ways to pronounce this name.
4
And
if you include
the one that-
Japanese.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of like what you could assign to Dante, right? You could assume that he somehow knew the Greek pronunciation, even though he didn't know Greek. Like,
Well,
it's
we know
possible that-
we know beyond a shadow of a doubt he didn't know the Greek, so that's highly unlikely.
Yeah, but certain like discrete Greek rules might have been, you know what I mean? Like,
No, I understand that. But I'm just saying,
pronunciation,
like, we
like-
have no way of knowing because, like,
Right.
like, we're talking. If he knew anything of it, it would have been niche Greek because he knew nothing of the rest of the wider.
I mean,
All I'm gonna say is Dante
Blind
sounds
guess.
like a nerd, and
We're all
he probably
nerds.
would have known it. No, I'm just saying that Dante sounds like a nerd. This might have been something he actually looked up.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing. Because, we're making a partial
the
mistake
Greek was
here.
not widely known.
What is
It
the
would have
way
been
that
difficult
most people were
for him to
taught
get.
in Dante's time?
What?
From book? No, not from
Oh.
books. From tutors.
Yeah.
So
Any
it
Greek
would have been
that he might
influenced.
any Greek that he might know would have been passed through Islam. You know, the Muslim scholars.
Well, but his tutors.
Tudor period doesn't come for another couple centuries.
so, forgive my shitty pronunciation. Tutor. No, but but because one of the things we have to take into account in this time period, because this is actually something it just clicked in my head because it happens in the England's time period's education because of this. You become influenced by the people you were tutored by. So, for example, if certain tutors he had in his younger days were Arabic or Greek potentially. They may
I
have.
think he might have known some Arabic. Yeah.
He may have been taught a different pronunciation by the tutor than even what traditional Florentine Italians would have used because of the way the education system worked back then. So, like, trying to guess how he would have said it is just pure fun for us. For those watching, I'm trying to clarify this for anybody watching. This is pure speculation because we are talking about a time period where education is far from standardized. Dante was more educated than the average person of his day, and some of it was by book learning, some of it was by church learning, and some of it was by tutor learning.
So, just for giggles, I asked ChatGPT how would Dante have pronounced that beast's name, and it said it would have been pronounced with the Italian Cerberus.
Yeah. So, like, even the ecclesiastical Latin pronounces it Cerberus, as with we were talking about the deity Ceres earlier. It would be pronounced in ecclesiastical Latin as Ceres.
Yes.
So, unless he goes all the way back to classical Latin, it would be Cerberus.
Classic or ecclesiastical, he would still fall into this because the difference between classical and ecclesiastical Latin is the phonemic vowel accent marks as opposed to the particular consonant pronunciations.
And I just asked ChatGPT, why would Dante have used Italian and not classical Latin? And it gave me 4 independent reasons, which I'll put in. Some.
I'm just saying, like, even if he went back to it, it would still have the CH sound, is all. Like, the consonants don't change. It's the phonemic vowels that change between the two.
Maybe I'll take a screenshot of this and, like, make it a footnote to his...
Yeah. The main reason I say Cerberus instead of Cerberus or Cerberus is because the fact that it went from a hard k sound to a s sound has always bothered me. Like, that transition, I don't know where, when, or why it happened, but it bothers me, and I refuse to use it now that I know.
Well, then your local basketball team must fucking drive you insane.
Oh, you have no idea. The fucking the Celtics as opposed to the Celtics. Yeah, no, it bothers me. It fucking bothers me. But then again, I live in Massachusetts where weird pronunciations are all over the place. I live next to a town that is spelled Billerica. Now, a normal person looking that would think it was Billerica. No, it's Billerica.
Yeah.
What about Wista?
Oh God!
Worcester.
Don't get me started on Worcester. Worcester, Leominster, Gloucester. Like, no, I hate them all.
Hold on. but I'm from Dorchester.
Oh god, no, Quincy is the worst because it's spelled Quincy. That C has a Z sound. What other word in the entirety of the English language can you think of that uses a Z sound where a C is? It's absurd.
In Boston, a lot.
Touche.
I was about to say, can we go on to things like, when you guys try to pronounce the Native American words of your area, like
Lord,
the different ways I've heard Massapequa fucking said over the years.
Massapequa. Yeah, no, it's
now,
bad.
Going back to what we're actually reading rather than weird pronunciation shit. The reason. Go ahead.
Well, before we leave that subject, I just wanted to say that this was explained to me when I took Greek. The reason these transitions happen is because I forget what they call it. Is it the glottal sound when the back of the tongue hits the throat?
I believe you're correct, I should say.
It's moved to the dental, or with both kappa turning into a soft C, and also chi turning into chi, right?
Yeah.
In Latin, and so for whatever reason, sounds in the back of the mouth move to the front of the mouth in several cases. And so it all gets translated that way. So CH becomes the CH that we know in English, but originally CH just meant a K followed by an H, which is a sound.
Yeah.
But I think at some point, people lost the ability to make that sound.
As vowels shift in language, when vowels get pronounced closer to the front of the mouth rather than the back of the mouth, that is usually what changes how consonants are pronounced. The mouth placement with vowels. So
so if your tongue is farther forward when you're pronouncing a vowel sound, then rather than try to move your tongue back to the appropriate place in the mouth for the following or preceding consonant, you're just going to use wherever it currently is or very near it. So
this is partially accurate because I honestly expected Despy to bring this up where I wouldn't have to. Partially, this is also the influence of neighboring languages. As languages evolve, they are highly affected by their neighbors. This is coming into it as well. So the greater influence of trying to learn Latin or Greek by a neighboring culture then is influenced by their phonemic foundations. So, for example, like in certain languages, like Japanese, they do not have the L sound in the same way that they do in other languages, so on and so forth.
So I just put in sound chat what they're all called.
The majority of these influences come basically via trade routes. So if you look historically, basically who did they trade with and who did they trade with heavily, you'll see the majority of linguistic influences from that language to this language via those trade routes.
And not disproportionately, conversely, it swaps. Whoever is trading the most heavily to is the one that also gets the most culture back. So, when Europe was trading very heavily along the Silk Road, primarily one way, they were bringing more and more culture back to Europe, and when that shifted along the Silk Road about 230 years later, conversely, then European culture got very heavily drawn into Asia. This is very much a symbiotic converse relationship within the ancient mercantile system. Whoever got the most money also got the most cultural influence back on their home country. Whoever was creating the most goods got the least amount of cultural influence, and vice versa.
And this is one of the major reasons why, and I hate tying this back to Japan, the reason why Japan's language hasn't changed much is due to the fact that they had an entire period of over 250 years in which they had their borders closed to basically everybody.
And
Yeah.
another 75 years after that, where it was basically illegal to change the language.
Well, but
I said basically. The Bakufu would have been on your ass, and you'd know it.
Yeah.
And then over the last 80 years, it's been language changed nonstop because of the influence of American and Western cultural cultural
Exchange.
word. Thank you.
Word exchange. Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, now going back to what we're talking about with Dante, the reason I find this the most interesting is he doesn't sound terrified in this situation. He sounded terrified with the lion, the wolf, and the leopard. He sounded terrified when he was in the tumult of the crowd. In this, it's almost like awe. And I found that interesting with the way that he words this, both the translations and the original.
Well,
I'm not saying I
probably
wouldn't be
knows.
in awe either. I'm just saying I find it interesting that he chooses to show awe here, but not in the other places, and I think that's probably
I
significant.
think I know why.
Good.
I think it's because he knows who that beast is, right? He knows who Cerberus is. He's read the Aeneid, and in the Aeneid, Cerberus can be mollified by throwing honey cakes in his maw, which is it's both Musa and Sayers like bring this up. Interestingly, so I think he knows that there's a way to get past him. There's a trick for it. However, they don't have honey cakes, so he just picks up mud and throws it in there, and that's sufficient.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it kind of shows that the Cerberus here is somewhat different than the Cerberus of the Aeneid. So the mythological Cerberus, as opposed to the literal one that's in front of him, I guess deserves more respect in some ways. And this one will eat anything, including mud.
Well,
Will be mollified by it.
I mean, okay, I could see that. For me,
So he knows he's safe because he knows that there's a way to get around it, and he knows Virgil especially knows because he wrote about it.
oh yeah, I forget about that secondary connection as well. It's like
Yeah, he knows the Aeneid backwards and forwards, right? So when something from the Aeneid shows up, he's familiar with it. That's my theory.
Yeah, I mean, it. My understanding, and mind you, this is all from kind of colloquial absorption rather than any of the original text. My perception of Cerberus is one of his primary role was to prevent souls of the dead from trying to escape Hades. So he did not typically like he did not pose a threat to the living trying to enter Hades in most cases. It was
It's
generally
reversed here.
only. Yeah.
His job is to keep anyone can leave hell anytime they want. They just don't because of their own self.
Yeah.
But he's there to guard people from coming in. But they happen to be able to get through it both because the grace of God and also because of the trick of throwing mud in his gut, which most people wouldn't know to do.
There's that, but I mean, this could be that foreshadowing because of the way he reinterprets hell that anybody can leave at any time. The aspect of this could also be that he's basically trying to allude that the ancient myths were wrong too, that Cerberus was not trying to keep people from escaping hell. He was just in that place and people read more into it. And the mud being fed there is quite literally the aspect of it's anything will mollify him, not because he has due less respect, but people misunderstood his actual goal.
Could it also be that the fact that in the original story was honey cakes, and in this case that they're using mud because they're in hell, it would be seen as like not sacrilegious, but like to a different like cultural aspect. So to give him honey cakes would be to affirm his existence to what is it, in the realm of God. But to give him mud would be symbolism of
At his level.
like right.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that could very well be it.
I should note in the Aeneid, Sybil throws Cerberus a loaf laced with honey and herbs to induce sleep specifically. So it sounds as if he's like he'll eat just about anything that's given to him. It was the honey cake was specifically to put him to sleep, but I think what Virgil does here is simply give him something to munch on to pacify him.
Well, it specifically points to this in previous tercet, such as that dog is, who is barking craves, and quiet grows as soon as his food he gnaws. For to devour it he but thinks to and struggles. So it's pointing to. We could add a bunch of other shit that isn't actually implied here, but there is actual like mental effort that comes into the effort of like gnawing at whatever he is eating. So it is immaterial to this. So yeah, it very well could just be give him something to gnaw on, be it mud, a bone, a tree stump, a soul, immaterial. Because in the next part they start talking about souls, but that's why I say he doesn't care.
So I remember being taught that he's guarding people, he's stopping people from going in, not out. But I don't know where. I don't seem to see that in this canto. So it must be mentioned elsewhere. But I do remember being taught that.
I'll be honest, I've been taught the same thing by other people, so like that's why I didn't even question it, because I know it's not a uncommon refrain. That being said, it is, in my opinion, based on the information that we have, interpretation from other portions of the story, because of a lot of this is done through implication. There are certain things that even up to we're only like partially way through Canto 6, even in the previous 5 cantos, that are taught that are not literally within the text in any of the translations or the Italian. So there are certain things that obviously are cultural, contextual from the time period when it was spread wide during the 1340s into the 1400s. Because it didn't start to spread wide until after his death, and this was one of his final works. I mean, he completed it the same year he passed away.
Well, this is disappointing. So I was going to bring up just a fun little thing about Cerberus's name, but apparently it's actually rejected by a number of etymologists. So it's sad. For a while there, I thought Kerberos meant spotted, so basically Hades named his dog Spot. But unfortunately, that is not considered to be an accurate etymology presently, which is sad.
I think we should roll with it until it is.
Well, the other thing is he may not have called it Spot. He may have been trying to imply spotted, which is still actually a valid part to the thing.
It's not Spot. His name is Sprinkles.
Well, what I was trying to get at is it may be like saying like this interpretation of like a solid black dog may have always been incorrect. We may have been looking at more of like a Dalmatian or a what's that Asian dog that has the spots on it. Something along that line where we're actually dealing with a dark black coat with like lighter like brown spots mixed in.
I
Yeah.
honestly think instead of making him a towering figure, we just need to make him a ravenous chihuahua with 3 heads. That's all we really need to do.
No, I'll stick with the pug idea because at least that's fucking cute. I don't need to deal with 3 rat dogs yapping at me.
I'll take the Rottweilers, just do not give me the 3-headed chihuahua.
Just because that noise, could you imagine it? I've been in a house of 3 chihuahuas. You don't want that.
All right, who's up next?
Whoever wants to go, we're going to be starting on They Were All Lying, which Tercet 37 in the Sayers, under
line 37.
And where are we ending?
Natural break is when we get to Tercet 50 or line 60. There's, if you're looking at the screen here, you can see.
Tell me if thou knowest to what shall come.
Okay. I can go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
They all were lying prone upon the earth, excepting one who sat upright as soon, as he beheld us passing on before him. O thou that art conducted through this hell, he said to me, recall me, if thou canst. Thyself wast made before I was unmade, and I to him the anguish which thou hast, perhaps doth draw thee out of my remembrance, so that it seems not I ever seen thee, but to me who thou art, that in so doleful a place art put, and in such punishment, if some are greater, none is so displeasing. And he to me, thy city which is full of envy, so that now the sack runs over, held me within it, in the life serene. You citizens were wont to call me, is it?
It would be Ciacco.
Ciacco. For the pernicious sin of gluttony, I, as thou seest, am battered by this rain. And I, sad soul, am not the only one. For all these suffer the like plenty. For the like sin, and word no more spake he. I answered him, Ciacco, thy wretchedness weighs on me, so that it too weep invites me. But tell me, if thou knowest, to what shall come.
Yeah. Now, the Sayers and Longfellow bring this up. The Ciacco, the way this is being brought up is about the particular Florentine history.
Can we do one more Tercet?
Oh, good.
It stops in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, good.
Oh, okay. So, the
If thou knowest
citizens...
to what shall come the citizens of the divided city? Do you see?
To what shall come the citizens of the divided city, if any there be just, and the occasion, tell me why so much discord has assailed it.
There you go.
Yeah, I had technically stopped a little bit earlier because of the bringing up to Ciacco. I was going to stop it even earlier mid-sentence. But because of the aspect this is bringing it to allusions to Florentine history, this is the social commentary of the time that he's bringing it to this, as well as the particular story of Virgil.
That's why I wanted the next one too, because
the
divided city is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to get there before we got to the divided city. That's why I broke it where I did. But immaterial. We got to it in the end. It doesn't matter. This is as important that within an instant he then uses a moniker that he did not use himself, so on and so forth. So that also implies now this goes back to a different commentary different context of his influence of Virgil upon himself, to where like pretty much anything Virgil said is taken like gospel by Dante, both in the story and in real life, and that is no more apparent to me than in this particular area of hell, because of like any time he is given a title by Virgil, the very next time he addresses Virgil, he uses said title every time. And in this time, it was so stark because of how quickly it happened. Like that is, in my opinion, when he's also bringing this into the Florentine history, he's trying to give air of like authority to the social commentary that this is the cause of this dividedness. That's how I read it.
What's the cause?
The person of Ciacco, the name actually has a context, because that name is actually a nickname of a person in Florentine history at this point. He's trying to cause to bring a context to that individual within Florentine nobility, causing the separation and divide within the city. That's all. And Longfellow points it out in his commentary, is why I bring it up, is because he actually breaks it at the very first mention of the name.
Ayers and Musa both seem to think it's somewhat of a mystery who he is, although Musa does have a guess.
Oh, who's the specific guess that they say there? Because Dante only gives us a nickname, so like there's no specific name given in the other stuff either.
There's a Ciacco del Anguilea.
Okay.
It's a footnote in the spreadsheet at that line.
Okay.
Under Musa. And
I don't keep that open because of what we've talked about so far. So that's what,
a minor poet of the time, and presumably the Ciacco of one of Boccaccio's stories. So apparently he appears in the Decameron as well.
Oh, okay. So.
So that's the theory, is that it's him, because he is called Ciacco as well.
What is it? It's a derogatory Italian word for pig, hog.
Yeah.
An
Basically,
adjective for filthy.
he consumed a lot.
Or
Yeah.
swine.
Yeah, Ciacco is said to be a pig's name, hence he was called this for his gluttony.
Yeah, it's basically to you youngins, it's like calling somebody a chud. Like, I mean, that's literally what this is essentially doing.
I mean, pig sort of has the same connotation today.
No, I'm not saying it's I was just using it's kind of like using the modern nomenclature for the younger people who end up watching this later, because it's like like calling somebody a pig today is like calling them a either slovenly, like messy, etc., or a police officer. Like back then it was not.
Oh no, I mean, you can be told that you eat like a pig, you know. There's a lot.
Right.
At least to me, that was always about mess, not about quantity.
But if I'm not mistaken, like even to this day, like calling somebody a pig in like France, for instance, is like a pretty heavy insult.
Yeah.
Heavy, literally, right?
Several. I mean, several.
Typically, you'll call somebody a pig if you think they're overweight.
Yeah. In there specifically, 100%.
And here,
well, like I said, here I've always seen it not just bigger people. We have other colorful insults for those individuals.
No, I understand, but if you call somebody who's overweight a pig, they'll know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, they'll
I'm
know
not
the
saying it's
implication.
the only connotation. It also could mean you're a cop, right?
No. What I was going to say is the implication that I was saying about pig, with as far as like eating, it wasn't the weight of the individual, like the way that I've always used it. It was like when they would like eat with their mouth open, food, getting all over it. Like that was what it was to me, was the uncouthness, the dirtiness of it, not the quantity of the food being eaten. And maybe this is my Monty Python influence, because of the way that one scene goes. Like that's.
I just asked ChatGPT for whatever. Uncleanliness is the first definition, and the second one is gluttony, and then there's 4 more after that.
Okay, so at least I wasn't way off, because that was always the way I used it, and like people around me used it. It was like that person eats like a pig is.
The rest are rudeness, selfishness, sexism, and laziness. I would add cop as the 7th, but
at one point in time in I forget what company put it out. A alternate definition for bacon was a police officer's uniform.
Right. I once heard somebody call a cop a blank eye, which I thought was pretty.
I mean, it's creative, but that's a new one to me.
Yeah. Well, it was back in the day. That was like in the early 80s.
Wow, that's a new one to me, because that's like it's creative.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like going into the divided city, talking about like the divide between the whites and blacks, which we were talking about earlier, and that's political parties, not fucking races. People for clippable moments. Fuck you. Like this is what he's getting into, and it is at least in my opinion, when he is again bringing it up so close to Kerberos, it is because of the fact that this is in the legend of Kerberos. One of the other portions of this is that occasionally the heads would fight, and this is again the symbolism of two sides of the same city fighting one another.
Just for anybody in chat, I support all out of context clips that are taken.
I still had to cover myself for legal matters.
Okay, I just put for the words "that divided," I put a link to the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, because that's
that works.
this is the part where we have to learn that. And then for state, I guess I'll put. I don't think it's Italy. I don't think Italy's the state. What's the state?
No, it's Florence.
It's Florence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I'll
because
just link to...
Musa says state, where the correct word here is city. So licitaden. Yeah, licitaden della città partita literally means the city dwellers of the city divided.
So Republic of Florence, should I link to that?
Yeah, that would probably be like Sayers identifies Florence, and though the Guelphs and Ghibellines were all across Italy, since there was no Italy at the time, as it were, it was a large collection of small city states. It would most likely, I think, have been where Dante called home at the time, which I believe was Florence.
So, but I want to link not just to the Republic of Florence. I want to link to 13th century Florence specifically. Just so that when people click on it, it's not, I guess Republic of Florence, yeah, is because it was only a republic for a certain amount of time. Maybe that's good enough. Let's see. 12th, 13th, 14th. Oh, yeah, that's good enough. Okay, I'll link to that.
Oh, you know what? Actually, it's probably not referring to the Guelphs and Ghibellines, but rather to the black and white Guelphs, which were specifically in Florence.
Yeah, but I linked to that. In line 65 when it says the rustic party. That's linking to specifically the white Guelphs. So I assume because the Wikipedia article about Guelphs and Ghibellines also has a section about the blacks and the whites. It's doubly divided, I guess you'd say.
Yes, that's actually
Also
where I'm pulling this from is that section that you linked. But because Sayers points specifically to Florence, and it was the Florentine Guelphs specifically who had divided in this way, that seems the more likely meaning of the division that he's talking about. The divided city. If the divided city is Florence, then the division is between the black and white Guelphs.
Okay, so let's see if I can find a better article to link to that's specifically just about the Guelphs.
Well,
I mean,
you
I
have
just want
one
them
that
to
has the
know.
You had the one that has the white Guelphs. You could put the black Guelphs on the other one.
Yeah. And there is a Black Guelphs like Britannic article, which would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wikipedia doesn't go into that much detail, so. Okay, so where did I
Animals,
put it?
move.
Oh, I totally forgot that one of the
We'll
conflicts
drive the
between.
other out by brutal means. So I'll put the white Guelphs for the other. How
I
about
totally
that?
forgot one of the conflicts between the Guelphs and the Ghibellines was the War of the Bucket.
Yeah. Yeah.
The things we fought
Okay,
wars
so
over.
now do you see where it says the other in line 66? The other would be the white Guelphs, right?
Let's see here. Well, if
Or
he's
is it the
referring
other
to
way around?
the,
No,
if
the
he's
rustic party
referring
is white.
to the, yeah, if he's referring to the rustic party as the white Guelphs, the other here would be the black Guelphs.
All right. Okay, so that's the way I have it linked. So I'll just keep that divided state as the like, because what people really need to know is that the Guelphs ran the Ghibellines out first, and then the conflict between the whites and the blacks occurred. Like that's the order. So maybe that's, and it's also explained, like Sayers explains it in that very same line. Our distracted town. Oh, she specifically says our distracted town is Florence.
Yes.
That divided state.
Well, and this is something that, like, if you were studying this, you should know this already, but if you have not been educated on this, like, city-states were still a thing very much so within Italy at this point, even though they did not operate like the Greek city-states. These were operated very much the same way under the papacy. That's part of what leads to a lot of
to the
these
extent that they were
cultural
under the
divides.
papacy, right? Like that's the.
Well, but the way the borders are
Some
set.
of them were under the papacy. Some of them were under kings.
Well, all of them fall into those two categories too. What I'm talking about is slightly different. What I'm talking about is the patchwork nature. Like, it wasn't just Florence, it was Florence and a certain area around it that was considered the Florentine city-state, and those borders were set somewhat by war, but primarily by the papacy. And that's why I say, it's why those two terms could be interchangeably used here. Is because of the way, at this time period, the way Italy worked, they were one and the same thing.
Are we in the
Yeah,
13th?
I'm just saying, if you're
century?
Ghibelline, then you're not run by the Pope.
14th century.
Yeah, because I was about to say, 14th century church kind of has a lot of power with all of the monarchies around here.
Yeah,
I mean,
even the ones that were
like-
trying to do divine right of kings bullshit were fucking still at this point very subservient to the papacy.
I mean, you got to wonder what Charlemagne was thinking, right? Because if he realizes that he sets a precedent for over 1,000 years of future kings being essentially made kings by the Pope.
yeah,
Right, like all the way to Napoleon until Napoleon changes it.
yeah.
Arguably Frederick II changed it, but we can get into that another day.
Well, here's the thing. Like, even though Napoleon grabs the crown and puts it on his own head, the deal that he makes with Rome says that after him, by virtue of him inviting them to even be there, that means future rulers will still be crowned by Rome. So Napoleon doesn't really even take it away. He just makes himself the exception.
Like I said, Frederick II before him.
Because that concordat gives Rome a lot of power.
How many people here know the history of Frederick II?
I do not.
Okay, Frederick II, son of Frederick Barbarossa, was Emperor Frederick II. He was in exile during the crusade that lasted through the 1200s. He was not given his his empire by the papacy. The papacy actually stood against him with the person who had usurped the crown at this point. He crowned himself, and the papacy basically had to go with him because he had the bigger army by the end of it. Like, he eventually was like, no, this is mine, go away. And
Well, the Ghibellines want that too, right? That's kind of what they're fighting for.
Well, the argument is that Frederick did it legitimately, though, because he actually was the legitimate heir.
Yeah, no, I agree. But nevertheless, like, throughout the Middle Ages, the Pope, like, crowns all of these kings, like, around Europe. There are people like Frederick who, like, could be the exception to that rule, but it remains a rule.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Although, after the French Revolution, it was unclear whether it would remain a rule. And Napoleon specifically empowers Rome to do that. It's just not with him.
Yeah, but we're talking about something that happens 500 years later.
Right.
I mean, but what I was just getting at is, like, basically, if kings control these cities, it's only by proxy.
Yeah,
Well, it's a constant tug of war, right? Between how much the Pope can tell a king what to do and how scared should that Pope be. Or
I look at it. I look at it a lot like federal government and state more than anything. So like the king is in control of the state, but the Pope is in control, like, the federal government in that aspect.
I mean,
in a lot of ways, yeah.
John, this would be John the 22nd. Yeah, he was not known as a light-handed pope either. John the 22nd was rather heavy-handed with the military and political interweaving. So, like, this is not a time where he is lacking power, or the papacy is lacking power.
But keep in mind, even Frederick, like the second, like, he's the last of his line. It's not like he establishes a dynasty that is independent of the Pope and, like, moving forward.
Well, technically that's because he dies without heirs, but yes. Yes, but that was a happenstance of history, more than, like, the
but it takes down the Holy Roman Empire, basically.
Yeah, it does. Well, it took down the Holy Roman Empire, in my opinion, them trying to take the crown from him in the first place. His trying to take it back didn't destroy it. He was just the last of the long line. Because, like, when they broke that succession line is when basically the fracturing became exponential within the empire, and then led to the final collapse laterally.
Right, and so the very next Holy Roman Emperor, Henry VII, goes to Rome to be coronated. So Frederick doesn't really set a precedent there. Like, he was trying to, and maybe if he had heirs, he would have. I don't know.
I honestly think that is something that's lost to history. But it's fun to think about because it's just it's one of those interesting points of history.
I mean, there are plenty of kings that do, to varying degrees of success throughout the Middle Ages, try to defy. It's not that the Pope picks every single king in Europe. Like, it's kind of he picks a lot of them.
Well, the argument is picking, because that part I agree with you on. The problem is without ordination and coronation.
As the houses are playing the great games, right? One of the ways to get into power is to get Rome to back you. It's not a guarantee of anything, but it's like a factor in your favor, right?
Well,
if you're
one
trying
of the things
to play that Game of Thrones,
at least until, but correct me if I'm wrong on this, Despy, I think it is 1480 or 1470, somewhere around there. Up until that point, without ordination and coronation, you were fucked. So you could
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
a king in exile, you could be all this shit, but it didn't matter. Eventually, you had to have Rome behind you, because without that ordination and coronation ceremony, you were not technically king.
At least until Henry VIII fucked it all up.
That too, but that's much later in another story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, because this is something that Frederick, by the end, even had to get the papacy to coronate him, but the difference is he did it at the point of a sword. He forced Rome to do it, as opposed to Rome forcing him to capitulate.
Yeah, that's another thing is if these kingdoms are close to Rome, then they have the ability to bite back, and so he kind of has to like read the tea leaves there and let those kingdoms do what they want. But if it's a far away kingdom, like before they go Anglican, England, for instance, he doesn't have to worry about England invading.
But he does have to worry about this. We can point to a time in between these two, with Alexander Sextus's reign in the papacy. Time periods where England and France actually did start supporting certain Romani nobility against the papacy, bringing the French cannons to Rome's walls, for fuck's sake. Distance is changed very much by intention, and Charles wasn't fucking around. Whether he had fucking gout and fucking syphilis didn't matter if he had to wear a codpiece that was oversized.
Well,
he was going, and he was gonna fuck up Rome if they didn't get out of his way.
Let's just say that the church was pretty heavy-handed for a couple centuries, and this was also another pushing factor for the Protestant Reformation. Like,
Also true.
Not
yes.
not necessarily just what is it, like the removal of the books.
Not to mention the schism.
Right, and but like this is one of the major reasons why the Protestant Reformation like got kicked off.
Fun fact: the Catholic Church now acknowledges all 95 of Luther's theses. Like he's totally won.
Yep. And you will very rarely get any Catholic to fucking admit that who is not like you.
Yeah. 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 I mean,
and you know what's even funnier? You will get.
If there were a Lutheran in the room, I would deny it, of course, but
no, you wouldn't. But here's the other funny flip side of this. I can name probably 2-3% of Protestants I know who even know all 95, and that the Catholic Church has accepted them all.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to unlink the one where it says that divided state. I'm going to make divided go to Guelphs versus Ghibellines. But then for why is it so plagued with strife, that's where I'm going to link to Guelphs versus Ghibellines.
Yeah.
Instead of whites versus blacks. Just so people can see the background.
We should also link, we'll have to find it later, it's immaterial to do right now, a link to the Florentine banking system crisis at the time that is influencing part of the social issues here. That is some of the things that Dante is commenting on here, so it would help.
Relevant to the church today, in fact.
Yeah, so this would for when we get done here today, we can link that later because it's immaterial to find right this second. But so
should we explain what all of this is? What the Guelphs versus Ghibellines was, and then the whites versus blacks? Just for people who don't know.
I mean, I say we do that after we get done with the reading, so we don't lose Despy before the end of the reading. But yes, we should, because that is actually something that is going to be important. Because certain contexts here don't make sense without it. So yeah, that's absolutely something we should do. But to get back to the reading, and he to me, they, after long contention, will come to bloodshed. And the rustic party will drive the other out with much offense. Then afterward behooves it this one fall within 3 sons, and rise again the other by force of him who now is on the coast. High will it hold its forehead a long while, keeping the other under heavy burdens. However, it weeps through it, there yet, and it is indignant. Oop, I hate that. They just are two and are not understood there. Envy and arrogance and avarice are the three sparks that have all hearts enkindled. And here ended he his tearful utterance, and I to him, I wish thee still to teach me, and make a gift to me of further speech. Farinata and oh god, I'm gonna butcher this name.
Pagacchio.
Once so worthy, Jacopo Rusticchio, Rusticucci, sorry, Rusticucci, Arrigo and Mosca, and others who on good deeds set their thoughts, say where they are, and cause that I may know them, for great desire constraineth me to learn, and if heaven doth sweeten them, or hell envenom. And I'll stop here because it's a natural stopping point in speech, but it is also this points again to Dante's humanism, and I like to draw attention to that each time it becomes so highly relevant. Even in hell, where he is not even sure at this point he will fully make it to heaven. He trusts, but he's not fully convinced because of how deep they still are in hell. He is worried about others who have done good deeds and thoughts, and worried about the fate thereof. Like, that is a very humanistic thing where he puts the fate of others above his own. And, like, he does that all throughout hell and purgatory. Like, we'll see this as an ongoing narrative until we get to Canto 67.
Yeah, so I put links to all of the names in here, except for Arrigo, because nobody knows who that is.
It's like, honestly, based on the way that word is used in other time periods, it's probably a nickname for somebody, and we just have to like dig to figure out.
Probably just a contemporary of Dante's, like some dude he knew.
Some priest, something, yeah. And that's all I'm saying. Is it's just one of those things where it's like, in the 1300s, this level of humanism is rare. It is a growing sentiment, especially within Mediterranean Europe, but it is still highly rare. It makes me wonder why he was so compelled to this humanism, because from the particular like access to what teachers we do know he had, so on and so forth, they themselves were not humanists, even theistic humanists. It really makes me wonder where he gets this from. What philosopher he read that we don't know specifically he read, etc. Or did he come up with this himself? Because this is evolved humanism almost a century before we see it elsewhere in Europe. And I think that's a significant point to bring up when we're talking about early 1300s.
So these people that he mentions, Farinata, Tegahio, and then Jacopo Restucci, Arrigo, and Mosca, he refers to them, he asks where they are, because he thinks they're all people that were bent on doing good. But then he's told that they're all in hell.
Yeah, well, we haven't got to where they were yet, but
okay.
My point is, I was stopping at his humanism, that he's in hell and he is asking about the fate of others, even when he is unsure about his own fate at this point. Like, that is...
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
And that's why I was stopping there. If you want, I will continue, or we can move to you continuing. Where Virgil then explains they're in hell. Because that is a rather lengthier part to keep speaking.
Well, I just wanted to say what we've already read, right? Where he says, after much contention, they will come to bloodshed. The rustic party will drive the other out by brutal means. I kind of think we do need to explain that a bit, because this is the whites versus the blacks. And this is a prediction that the whites will push out the blacks. And at this point, of course, he knows that the prophecy will come true, right? Because he's writing it from the future. He's because he set this like a decade or so in the past. And so he's predicting something that has already happened as he writes it, which is that at this point in the story, the whites have been run out of Florence. And now the reverse, or what this prediction is that Ciacco is making, is that it will be reversed and the whites will drive out the blacks.
No, that is valuable, but at the same time, like, I always hate when we, because you do it too, and it's not you, it's a lot of fucking people who do this, who call it a prophecy. We know it's not a prophecy, it's a literary agent, because yes, he's writing this from the future, and anybody who read this would also know that. Like, so that, like, this is, to me, more social commentary than even, like, an attempt at prophecy. It is the aspect of, this is his...
But just within the conceit of the poem, the dead are telling him, are predicting the future. They're telling him something that will happen in the future. I think that's why he sets it early, a decade or so earlier, 1 or 2 decades earlier, is so that he can say that when he was hell, he received all these prophecies. And some of the prophecies, I think, go beyond the present as he writes it. So I think the power of all of these other prophecies having already come true makes it seem as if those other prophecies will come true. You know what I mean? Like, it gives power to the predictions. If you don't want to call it a prophecy, that's fine. But the dead telling you the future sounds like a prophecy to me.
Well, no, but it would, if we were talking about something that was happening at a time period. The reason I say this is because we know he's using it as this, and you're right, some of these prophecies do go past.
I mean, within the conceit of the story, at the literal level, these are the dead telling him something that will happen in the future. We all understand that the author, like, already knows these things, which is why he's able to, like, make it.
Well, yeah, but with your interpretation, I'm not even saying you're wrong, by the way. But with your interpretation, it's adding a greater, like, thing where he's basically creating a foundation for an argument from authority later to prophecies, etc., which may be accurate.
Right.
But the way I read this
I think that's precisely what he's doing.
and like I said, you may be right. But the way I read this was the social commentary on this particular thing that he already knew happened, what he assumed would happen based on the events in the last year of his life as he's writing these lines, last years of his life, I should say, when he's writing these lines, where he is actually seeing the precursors to this happening, because and now we, having the benefit of hindsight, know that this too came true. Not in the exact way that he foretold it, but the because of the fact that this transition is also social commentary again on the Florentine banking crisis, which is why we'll have a link in the thing eventually for that. Like, that comes into this very heavily, where he's trying to talk about it. He sees the where this is coming, even though at this current time it isn't there, because all of the precursors for this switch to happen again are there already. So, like, it's not so much prophecy. Prophecy is social commentary, and I think, at least in my interpretation, all those future ones are also social commentary as opposed to arguments from authority, because the way he is arguing is, here is the evidence for this, in a very poetic way, mind you.
Well, he's also being very specific about when it will happen, right? He says, this side will fall within 3 suns, which means 3 rotations around the sun, or
We also
whatever,
have
3
video on
times.
YouTube.
I'm sorry?
There's no video. It's just black. What is it? Discord screens on YouTube.
Oh, why is it? Okay, hold on. For some reason, it transitioned instead of having the text up to just having Discord. When I have it switched over to OBS, the cameras will go black because this is essentially alt tabbed into the background. because OBS is a fucking loser like that. Let me try something.
Now I need to know what year specifically this is supposed to be.
1302.
It's
So,
okay. So
1300, the whites had driven out the leaders of the Black Guelphs, and then the Black Guelphs had gone to the Pope, who up until that point had been the quote fence sitter and not taken aside. He came back with an army to exile the white Guelphs out from Florence and return control to the Black Guelphs. And so the initial the initial expulsion of the leaders of the Black Guelphs happened in 1300. 1302 was the return of the Black Guelphs to take control of Florence with the Pope's army.
okay, and this poem takes place in 1300.
Yes.
So when he says within 3 suns, you're saying it happens in 2 suns, which would be within 3 suns.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
3 suns is 3 years.
Yes. So 1300, 1301, 1302, depending how you're counting, sometimes in these poems they will count the beginning year as one. So
Well, it is so Canto 1 takes place on Good Friday.
yes, Good Friday,
I don't know when
1300.
Easter comes, but we know roughly the month, and we may know the exact day of when this canto is. I don't know, because I know there's time clues specific.
Well, I mean, what is it? You just have to figure out what day of the year it is, and then figure out what liturgical year it is for the church, and then you'll be able to find it like pretty easily.
Yeah, it's I think less important the specific date, the year is sufficient for this.
Yeah,
because it's written
the
20
Gregorian
years.
calendar too.
So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, I'm just saying, like there's a 3-year cycle for what is it? For what is it for masses said that are like for like Sunday masses, and then there's a 2-year cycle for daily masses, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so I just looked it up. So it's Good Friday, and the sun is rising at the beginning, right? Because he's looking at a sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
And by Canto 20, there's sometimes suggestions that say that it's the being near the 4th hour of the night, which would be around 10 p.m. So at this point, we're still in Good Friday, somewhere in Good Friday. I don't know what time it is.
So
but
the commentary of Robert Hollander says Ciacco is concerned with the events of May 1300, 3 to 5 weeks after the date of the journey. So after his journey to hell, purgatory, and finally heaven, and thus events genuinely near at hand. The White faction, led by the Cerci family, or Cerci, I'm not sure. Selvaggia, in the sense that its members come from the wooded outskirts of the city, it will drive out the Black faction in 1300. So he's talking very, very like near future, and then within 3 years, so 1302, the White faction falls to the Blacks as they return to the city because due to Pope Boniface. Is that? I know it's not Boniface. Boniface, I'm guessing. Anyways, who?
But we do say Boniface in English.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was about to say Boniface is the correct pronunciation.
So yeah, so when Boniface returns to help the Black Guelphs.
Yeah, that's interesting. So okay, it's April the 8th, and it's who knows what time of day it is, but we'll know in Canto 9 what. So it's probably early evening at this point. We've just got to get to Canto 20 to know what time it is.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, if we're at Canto 6 and Canto 20 is that specific time, early evening, like, I'd say we're still in, like, midday afternoon is probably where we're at, technically.
Well, I mean, we don't know the rate of time as passage in these various things, because there could be, he was doing a lot of traveling in the beginning, which could have taken up a lot of time from his perspective, and now we're spending a lot of time on detailed interactions, which could be covering far less time span overall.
Oh, understand, but a lot of the interactions he's had along the way were during traveling, which also then intermixed the time. So that's what I mean. Like, this could be if Canto 20 is that late, for Canto 6 to be early evening just seems not impossible. Just it seems unlikely because it almost seems like with the way he times these out, it would be significant. Maybe not something we're specifically noticing, but something significant to him. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say we're saying that this is Good Friday that he's doing this on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, I mean, and this is over like a 3-day period that he's doing this.
The 3 cycles,
Yeah.
Presumably, it'll be Easter, in the heaven when he
Yeah.
gets there.
He gets to heaven. So, I mean, if you think about it, for most Catholics, 3 days before a holy day of obligation, you have a period of fasting and reflection, and like being what is it that he's putting it into this time period. Where do you reflect the most upon God than in a place of utter hell at the same time? So.
well,
I
it's
mean-
also with the period of fasting. It also comes the way that this poem starts. You never
Mhm.
know if this is a dream or reality of what he is going through. And guess what? What happens when you fast at a particular wrong time? Hallucination happens when you don't have food. So
Right,
it has that aspect to it as well.
Right, but I mean, like that kind of like when you fast like that's usually after weeks of like not fasting. Like you wouldn't necessarily have this after a few days. And when we talk about like Catholic fasting isn't eating nothing for 3 days. It's eating very meager meals for 3 full days, and not necessarily just like like going without entirely for that time period.
Well, it's all like I said. That's why I said if fasting at the wrong time period, because it also depends on the individual. Depending on how much they love food, depends on how much the absence thereof affects their psyche. Like for
Right.
me, put me on fast for 3 days, motherfucker. I'm gonna start seeing cheeseburgers and shit in there. Like, it can go over well.
Well, no. What I'm thinking about here is like, and what I'm getting at is like I have a feeling that it's not necessarily that it's like 1 day in each and then he's in heaven. I think it's more along the lines it's a day and a half in hell and a day and a half in purgatory, and then when Easter Sunday hits is when they're in heaven.
Oh, you may be right because my interpretation was slightly different. I always read Canto 100 as the first hour of Easter Sunday, as opposed to 1 day per cycle. I was doing day and a half, and where quite literally the poem ends on the first hour of Easter Sunday. Well, first hour of the dawn, therefore matching the 3-day cycle, because he is trying to emulate the 3-day cycle of Jesus in hell. Like that is part of this. That is a particular imagery he is trying to evoke in the reader. It would be very easy to evoke in the readers of the 1300s.
Well, I mean, this all depends. Rich, I don't know if you know this, but was midnight mass a thing during the 14th century?
I don't know. That's a good question. Midnight Mass, you're talking about Saturday night, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it's technically like it depends.
By Jewish laws, when the sun goes down, the next day occurs. So
Right.
Midnight Mass is technically, well, not even Midnight Mass. We call it anticipatory Mass. I suppose that's different.
Right.
Anticipatory Mass usually happens whenever the sun goes down after sunset on a Saturday, because by Jewish law, that's when Sunday begins. But Midnight Mass actually kind of follows the stricter law of the Gregorian calendar of when the day begins. And yeah, I would imagine midnight
I'm
mass
just-
would be valid at that point.
I'm just wondering. The thing I'm more wondering is that in this time period, did the starting of mass start at at noon, or was the consecration, or not noon, at midnight, or was the consecration the point at which they like the time hit midnight? That's the main question I have.
Let me see. So you are asking if you have to wait till midnight, or if you can just do it at sundown.
Well, no, I'm not. No,
Midnight mass.
Oh, here we go.
was-
Pope Sixtus II,
Yeah,
which is in fifth century,
fourth century.
is credited with beginning the practice of celebrating midnight mass at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome. By the 13th century, the practice had spread and was observed in various parts of Europe.
Well, yeah.
yes.
When I just looked it up, it was the tradition was started in the late 4th century in Jerusalem by Christian woman named Alighieri, and on the night of January 5th, the tradition reached the Western world in the year 430 under Pope Sixtus III. So technically, this started almost it looks like 70 years earlier in Jerusalem, spread to Rome. Once it hit Rome, it then spread like wildfire.
now, but my question is midnight mass at the beginning of mass starts at midnight, or is the consecration at midnight?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm looking.
And the other question is also at that is like, what is it? It also it like, would these midnight masses, would they have been high masses at the same time?
The tradition I can find here indicates that it traditionally celebrates midnight mass with church services beginning at midnight.
It's concentration. According to, well, hold on. The answer I'm getting from ChatGPT says it's the tradition of midnight mass that the mass itself starts generally before midnight, so that consecration, which is the central part of the Eucharist, occurs at or around midnight, presumably at or after midnight. So yeah, you're right. It's consecration.
But also, midnight mass I thought was primarily associated with Christmas, not with the resurrection.
No, midnight mass can be associated with Easter as well as Christmas.
According to the history of this, it started January 5th, 379.
Now, currently today, you can do what's called an anticipatory mass, which takes place long before midnight. It just has to be after sundown on Saturday.
Yeah,
and I definitely could do that for Easter and Christmas, and I can also do it every day.
What's the feast day in January?
Well, not every day, every week. I'm sorry?
No, it's not a feast day. It might have been the day that Mary and Joseph fled.
Well, January 5th would be Epiphany.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So if they do it on the Epiphany, that makes perfect sense, because they're holding the mass at midnight because supposedly Joseph and Mary left in the night to escape? Is it Herod?
Yes, King Herod, who was
yes.
Yep.
No, so yeah, I couldn't remember the holiday that was January 5th. It's been
Epiphany is
40
January
years.
6th, which of course has now been forever ruined by.
This specifies Alighieri did it on the night of January 5th, which by Jewish tradition would be the beginning of January 6th.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just one of those things where it's there's so many goddamn holidays in Catholicism, and it's been 40 fucking years since I celebrated any of them.
Right. No. Well, like my question.
Party.
Yeah, my question is that what is it? Would have the midnight mass we're talking about here? Would that have been a high mass, or would they have done a low mass for that?
If it was Epiphany, it would definitely have been a high mass.
Epiphany, it's not. I don't know. Is the Epiphany a holy day of obligation?
No, I'm saying if this
Yes,
is
it is.
actually connecting to, but if this is connecting to Epiphany, and this is like the initiating factor, and historically this is accurate, that 379 it happened on January 5th, then it would have been a high mass almost by definition, specifically because it happened in Jerusalem.
I'm realizing early January being Epiphany is current, but back in 379, that may have been when they celebrated Christmas.
Hold on. Yeah, it may have been. Hold on.
Well, that's certainly true in the Orthodox Church today.
Yeah. And given the Orthodox Church keeps a lot of the date structures, since they don't
can't
recognize
change anything.
Gregory's calendar.
They haven't been able to change anything since the schism, because in order for them to hold a church council, they all 12 must come together. It's okay if some people miss, but Rome cannot miss, because Rome is the first of equals according to the Orthodox Church. And so,
Which
without Rome,
I find absolutely hilarious that they have a schism from Rome, but they still hold Rome in this high esteem, and they can't make changes without Rome. It's
Welcome to
irony there.
Catholicism.
it's the difference between papal primacy and papal supremacy. Yeah, and they still hold the Roman pontiff as prime, just not as supreme. So they're stuck. They can't have a church council. They haven't changed. I mean, at least.
But yeah, it does seem like January 5th is associated with Epiphany, and at least in what Jack is currently searching.
I'm just saying, if I was Pope, I'd be like, hey, I'll come sit in on the meeting. You guys just go ahead and talk. I'll just be there.
It is January 6th for them. It's just that it's January 6th on the Julian calendar. And it's therefore January 19th on the Gregorian calendar. That explains the difference.
Okay, so at least by the little bit I've been able to glean from very cursory searching, Epiphany has been celebrated on this day at least since the 4th century. So, regardless of why they put it on this day, it has been celebrated on this day at this time, at least since then.
Well, because it's 12 days after Christmas.
I'm just letting everybody know I got about 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's why I was going to get back to it. But at least according to the very cursory searching, which I'll dig more later, this has been a tradition since that time period. So it was Epiphany. It wasn't a different Saints' Day or High Holy Feast Day or any of that.
But the reason is because it's 12 days after Christmas. So you have 12 days of Christmas, and then Epiphany. Epiphany ends Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
So the 12th night is Epiphany Eve. So that is the 5th of January. So that would be the ending of the period known as Christmastide.
And Rich, if you would like to go on, we're starting at Canto or line 85.
Okay.
And
how far are we going?
I'd say where is that one?
Just tell me when to stop.
The touching of a little on the future life.
Okay.
Because then we get into the final lines, which we'll let Despy read before.
And so this is answering. Okay.
The humanist point that I stopped on.
They are among the blacker souls, a different sin downway. Okay, so he's answering all of these good people, or the people that Dante assumed were always bent on doing good. The answer is apparently they weren't, because they are among the blacker souls. A different sin downweighs them to the bottom, so they're further down in hell. If thou so far descendest, thou canst see them. But when thou art again in the sweet world, I pray thee to the mind of others, bring me no more than I tell thee, and no more I answer. Then his straightforward eyes he turned askance, eyed me a little, and then bowed his head. He fell therewith prone like the other blind. And the guide said to me, he wakes no more this side of the sound of the angelic trumpet, when shall approach the hostile potentate. Each one shall find again his dismal tomb, shall reassume his flesh and his own figure, shall hear what through eternity re-echoes. So we passed onward o'er the filthy mixture of shadows and of rain with footsteps slow, touching a little on the future life.
Yeah. Now, again, to me, this is significant because it is pointing very much to Christian theology, Catholic theology specifically. The reason they are in the deepest portions of hell was the lack of belief. And the reason that they are of the blacker souls has nothing to do with their good intentions or any of that. It is quite literally
Their sins are various, right? So they're going to have, we're going to run across them, apparently. This is a preview. And they're each going to be at different levels for whatever reason. But they're all below this level, which is what he means by blacker souls. Blacker souls than the ones in the third circle.
Well,
those are not black elves. I'm just
They might be. Who knows? But it is interesting that he name checks them, right? So, like, when this is published, like, he's basically telling all of these people that they're going to hell, or that they've been to hell. I guess they're dead. I guess they're already dead. So their families are reading that they're that they are in hell.
So there was one thing I wanted to bring up that I had to look up because it's been so long, and if I remember correctly, the Christmas season ends technically on February 2nd with Jesus' presentation to the temple, because the baby Jesus is not referenced again after that. And that is where, what is it, the belief that the Christmas season ends on February 2nd.
Oh, I'm gonna really hate if that's what gave us the birth of Groundhog's Day. Punxsutawney Phil will be forever be tainted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing January 2nd. I mean, I've
February
always been
2nd.
taught that it ends on the Epiphany. Oh, February 2nd. Oh, you're talking about for the Eastern Orthodox.
No. I'm talking like for the Catholic Church, that the technical end of Christmas is after Jesus is presented to the temple, not after the Epiphany.
On February 2nd?
On February 2nd.
I'm not aware of.
Well, no, historically this did not change because remember we're talking about like feast days and all this shit, or early church history. This is a time period where the seasons were set by these feast days, not the actual times of year.
No. The February 2nd takes place 40 days after Christmas.
No, I know it.
40 days.
Yeah, I'm just saying it is set by historical events as opposed to geological or cosmological events that change it. It is tradition that sets the day and the season shift, and it is specifically feast days that end up becoming the delineation marks between seasons. That's all I was pointing to. Is it because we call seasons today by something different than what they called it then? It's just an entomological issue between the way the word used to evolved.
Jack, I have bad news for you about Groundhog Day.
God damn it, Punxsutawney Phil.
So it was originated by the Pennsylvania Dutch, who were following a German tradition known as Badger Day or Dachstag, which was marked on Candlemas, which was the feast presentation. So sadly for you, Groundhog Day comes from the church.
Well,
but not the Catholic Church.
Well,
Candlemas is a Roman Catholic tradition.
No, that's not what I mean.
Oh.
The idea that Christmas ends on Candlemas is not a Catholic thing. So for Catholics, it ends on the 6th. But ending on Candlemas is observed, well, actually it does say it is sometimes the Roman Catholic Church. So
Yeah,
there are two traditions then,
that
because
changed later. I'm not saying it didn't change, because you're right. Today it's not celebrated in that way, but back in the 14th century and very much
oh,
in
I
the
see what you
4th
mean.
century, it would have been. And so like modernity is slightly screwy with our heads on this, because that's why I was like, oh shit, don't tell me Groundhog Day, because I had forgotten this aspect, and my modernity had kicked in as well, where I ended it on Epiphany, because that's where modern Catholicism ends it, especially here in America. Like, but we're talking about before that happened. Like,
Yeah,
there's
'cause
a
I
reason
know
there's
When did it
2,700.
change?
I I know that what is it like traditional Catholics, like pre-Vatican II Catholics, celebrate Christmas up until what is it, February 2nd. I've seen it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I gotta find out. Maybe that's what it is. Is that like schismatics like want to keep celebrating it that way? That'd
Yeah,
be
so I'm reading a description here. While it's customary for Christians in some countries to remove their Christmas decorations on the 12th night, Epiphany Eve, those in other Christmas country or Christian countries historically remove them after Candlemas. So it depends on the particular.
Vatican II is when it changed, according to ChatGPT.
Oh, apparently it is considered by the Roman Catholics. It's considered an echo of Christmas.
I mean,
yeah, well,
it
whatever
makes
that
sense.
means.
Like, I
It
have
makes
this up
sense
here.
that because a lot of things in the Bible or last for 40 days. It would make
Yes.
sense that they would
Yeah.
celebrate
40
that.
You have 40 days of adoration before you have 40 days of reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
Which all of this originating from Noah's flood, 40 days and 40 nights of rain.
well, yeah, but we were
No, but no, it's not just that. You also have Jesus that was in the desert with 40 days with
Yes.
what is it? With the devil.
I say originating because it begins with the story of Noah. Like the first time 40 is seen in.
Yeah, the first
seen
iteration
in,
of the numerological
Yes.
foundation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, and
So
looking at this,
liturgically,
yeah.
it ends on the 6th, but the echo of Christmas continues until the 2nd.
well, but like I said, this seems to have shifted.
Yeah.
In 1962 to 1965, they don't give a specific year.
Well,
So this means that I can't be annoyed at people who leave their Christmas lights on until February anymore.
well, but here's the thing. I was never annoyed at those people. I was annoyed, especially in places like Florida, at the people who left them on until June.
Yeah, okay, that's totally fair.
Where it's like, bitch, we barely fucking get cold enough for you to do that once a year. Get the fuck out of here.
But it's too hot outside for me to take them down.
Then at least unplug them. They don't need to be blinking.
At that point, it's just Florida pride.
Yeah, it just keeps the gators away. That's why we put them on.
No, it doesn't. That's the worst part. It actually makes it worse, because what that attracts, what that attracts is rabbits, because it reminds them of like fireflies. And bugs surrounding plants, like fireflies surrounding plants, usually means detritus on the ground for rabbits to eat as well, so they end up going to the fucking thing. Well, what do fucking gators eat when they come out of the water? Anything they can get their fucking teeth around.
I know the 12 Days of Christmas is much older than 1962, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
No. This is just when, quote unquote, the Christmas season ending changed.
Right.
It's not a matter of any of the 12 days or any of that. It's just a matter of when the
12
church...
days is January 6th.
Yeah, but for this, it's not a matter of that. That was still a significant shift of time period, that 12 days. It is the Christmas season extended past because of the rest of the story of Jesus' birth. And it only changed specifically as the Christmas season not being recognized at the end in February to the end in January being changed was in 1962 to 1965 during Vatican II. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
even
when
know
that
what.
particular liturgical calendar was created, right?
Yeah.
But the tradition of 12 days instead of 40 starts in the Middle Ages.
No,
Also,
no.
Rich, if you include Christmas Day as the first day of Christmas, then the 12th day is the 5th, not the 6th.
Well, I mean, ending as the 6 comes, like at
Yes.
midnight.
Hey,
Yeah,
they had a midnight mass then too, so hey.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as we went
I'm
back with
kidding.
that. But the reason I say that this matters is because, especially within the clergy, this would change where they're reading out of their Book of Hours and all of that. So, like, this is very significant. Not as much to you and I, or you as a Catholic would be practicing, and me as a Reformed. Like, we wouldn't have done this because we don't read out of the Book of Hours. That's not our jam. The clergy does, though.
Hey, we like it when Epiphany falls on a Sunday because then we can knock out 2 obligations at once.
No, I'm not even arguing that. I'm
You know
just
what
saying,
that's like, don't
yeah.
you?
Yeah, I love when
That's
those times happen.
why I love when I prefer Christmas on a Sunday because that means that New Year's is on a Sunday too. Because
Oh yeah. That's
you
also
get
another
double
obligation knocked out.
Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I
Super.
said, all that's fine. For me, it's I'm now looking at this from the theological history, and all those nuns and priests. This was a very significant day because it changed where they started in their Book of Hours for the next season of reading. And
Well,
like,
no,
so,
but
good.
no, I'm just saying, like, it just makes sense for them to have 40 days of adoration before 40 days of reflection. Like this makes like liturgical sense.
And I've been misspeaking. Not
Entirely.
Book of Book of Divine Devotions.
Yeah.
That's where it changes. The Book of Hours
Yeah.
changes based on the hours of the day, not the season. That was my misspeak. The Book of Divine Devotions is what changes based on season, which would then also influence their sermons.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously you're more likely to do sermons based on what you were reading on a regular basis at the time. Whether this was intentional or not, I won't go into, but this would definitely change like how the people were preached to after this day as well.
You see, my time with Society of Saint Pius X helped.
I mean, all of our fucking backgrounds help with this one because for me it's like, gotta remember that recency bias. Gotta remember like a lot of this stuff, even though it changed before my lifetime. Not much before my fucking lifetime.
Right.
Like, so yeah, this my whole life I've known it this other way. Doesn't mean that's the way it's always been.
Well, like from what like my parents were telling me, like when Vatican II happened, like it was like a sudden shift. It was like one day the mass was in Latin, the next week it was in English.
I don't know if it
It's
was
like-
like
it's like
that
how it felt.
everywhere. I don't know if it was like that everywhere, but I could definitely see that happening in places like.
That's how my father described it. Like, because obviously he lived through Vatican II. Like he was like 10 when Vatican II happened at the time. So like for him, he said like you go to mass and then the priest is facing away from everybody like in front of like the altar and the tabernacle and everything, and then he's like, and then the next Sunday he's literally staring at us like and giving the mass in English and in Latin, and we're all holding our missals, and no one's using them.
Yeah, like.
And there's nothing to follow along with the missiles that you have in your hand that are literally tattered because it's like onion paper.
Yeah, that is. I could definitely see that, especially with how conservative we know that particular schismed cult is.
Well,
That
no,
that
like-
no that they would have that that minister, that priest, would have instantly obeyed on day one. Is what I was getting at.
Yeah. No, I get that. I'm just saying, like, for like my father didn't actually go to like Saint Pius the Tenth, like join the society until I was about 11, 12 years old. So like before that, we weren't even a part of the Society of Saint Pius X. We were a part of like your, what is it? They called in the society they called it Novus Ordo, like the new order. So I mean, what is it? So we were the Novus Ordo from the time I was born till I was like 12, and then we converted to Society of Saint Pius X.
Okay. So yeah, that still explains some things, but for different reasons. Because that would explain why he went to such a conservative offshoot when he did convert. Is because he had such a conservative priest follow that papal edict on the fucking spot and cause that jarring separation like that. Yeah, that still makes sense, just for different reasons now.
And that was one of the main reasons why a lot of like the quote unquote schisms that happened with a lot of these groups is like it wasn't something that was eased in. It was literally a flip of a switch, and everybody had to change on a dime.
Oh yeah, people outside of Catholicism, yeah, you just, unless you're a Mormon, and we're talking about words from the prophet, you have no idea the power of papal edicts. You don't realize like what these things do. Like it is as close to Catholics, as close as getting the direct word of God given to you. Is how it is taken.
I was baptized, got my like first Eucharist confession and everything in the Novus Ordo, and then I was confirmed in Society of Saint Pius X.
That's wild.
So all of my catechism had to be done through Baltimore Catechism, but it was taught to me from priests of the Society of Saint Pius X.
That's just wild. But Despy, since we have limited time with you, let's have you go on from Wherefore I Said.
Which line is that?
103.
103. Okay. Wherefore I said, Master, these torments here, will they increase after the mighty sentence, or lessen be, or will they be as burning? And he to me, return unto thy science, which wills that as the thing more perfect is, the more it feels of pleasure and of pain, albeit that this people maledict to true perfection never can attain, hereafter more than now they look to be. Round in a circle by the road we went, speaking much more, which I do not repeat. We came unto the point where the descent is. There we found Plutus, the great enemy.
So a couple of translation points here. The line that is translated, return unto thy science, in the 1400s, science was not what we think of it as today. The Italian word scienza would more probably be translated to knowledge or education, although Musa translates it as philosophy and Sayers as learning.
Okay. Return unto thy alchemy.
I mean,
not inaccurate, but I mean more what we're trying to get at is this is essentially Dante a couple hundred years before the Bard, basically saying there are greater things on heaven and earth than your your philosophy, Horatio. Like,
and then
it's the same kind of way of doing it, where it's not science as we look at STEM. It is science as we look at, the philosophy of science.
And then the final line, Plutus, the great enemy, Plutus being I actually have no idea why Longfellow and Musa translate it this way because the Italian word is Pluto, which is literally the Roman god Pluto, who is the Roman version of the Greek Hades, which in this case would all go back to the Latin Lucifer, basically.
Yes, I mean, depending on how you want to read the reason to change it to Plutus, it turns it more into a title as opposed to a name.
Okay.
Now, is that implied within the Italian? I have no fucking clue.
Well, all Roman gods are. There's a misconception that Roman gods have different names than the Greek gods. They have the same names. It's just that there was a taboo against saying the name of the god among the Romans, and so they would refer to them by their titles.
Well, certain gods did get outright changed, like Minerva, for example, outright changed the name from Athena.
Yeah.
Like that's why I went like this. Like sometimes, yes, you're absolutely right, especially when you're talking about the big three of Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto. But like it changes once you get out of the initial big 12 gods. Once you get into the lesser gods, this rule becomes very hit and miss.
You consider Minerva to be a lesser god?
No. Her name, I said, besides Minerva, outside of the Big 12, like, it gets very hit and miss, but her name is changed completely. Because they created an entire new goddess to take her warlike aspect of Bellona. So, like, like, this is the one exception in the Big 12, and then once you get into the lesser gods, like Mercury, etc., some of these gods have their name again outright completely changed, and new gods created to remove the warlike aspect, specifically of female deities.
So one example where this did not happen would be Uranus.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, this rule is generally true against almost every time you're going to be talking about the gods, because almost every time you're talking about the Greek gods, you're talking about one of the 12.
So is Plutus a proper name, or is it a title?
It turns it more into a title as would have been recognized within the Roman Senate, which is why I don't know if it's implied within Italian, but I can understand why they do it in English to try and make it more obvious to early English speakers, well, what we would call early English speakers, to recognize it as a title rather than a name. It just makes sense to me that they would do that. I just don't know if it makes sense with what they were translating from. Because if they don't call it a title in the Italian, then this is absolutely wrong. If by this point in history these are actually culturally perceived as the names, no longer the titles, this would
I was entirely wrong. Plutus is the Greek god of wealth. And so
Pluto and Plutus are the same, because Hades is the god of everything under the earth. That includes minerals, gems, all this as well. Like this is it gets split. This is why I was getting into mythology. Like it splits over time. Pluto originally, Hades originally was the god of everything under the earth, including wealth. Because
that's the thing is Plutus and Hades were different gods in Greek mythology, which is why I bring this up.
But I'm saying, at least according to the way I was taught, that is also a split within Greek mythology over time, that they split into two gods to separate the god of the underworld from the god of the underground. Because wealth in this time period all came from underground. All of your wealth, gold, silver, coppers, all these.
They're just delineating a dwarf from a Druger. It's okay.
Pretty much, yeah. But it almost feels like this is the Greek equivalent of what happened to Athena when she was moved to Rome. Her warlike aspect was completely removed and given to Bellona, and then she was basically turned into like a more virtuous, maidenistic, like aristocracy Roman-esque woman, and Bellona was more of the common Romanesque woman of the war, the legionnaire warriors that did occasionally happen to be women. People forget this aspect of this time period in history. It was rare, but it did happen. And it was split like this because of the cultural norms within Rome at the time of the assimilation of the gods. And yes, Rich, you are generally correct. This originally came from, there was a taboo against saying the names. But why was there a taboo against saying the names? Was it a taboo that it was too holy? That's what it became later. At least originally, from what I was taught, it was taboo specifically because of the fact that they wanted to inculcate it into their culture and remove it from the Greek culture altogether, as to say these were always our gods, and the Greeks just were using them, essentially.
Didn't work.
I know it didn't, but it was the attempt, at least for what I was taught. Is that
Like
accurate now to what we know? I don't know.
Conquer Rome, basically, in a way.
And like I said, good.
I'm having trouble finding anywhere where Plutus and Pluto are conflated as the same god.
Well, no, this is why I say I could be outdated. This is just how I was taught. Like, it could be outdated. Yeah. And here's the thing. My outdated knowledge could be accurate to their outdated knowledge, but not to what we know now. You know what I mean? It's another thing to take into account here. And that's why I bring it up, because if I was taught this, how long before me was that taught? So on and so forth. And how long before we actually discovered more text? How many more of these new scans did we discover from Brigham Young, going through scrolls that we found on the bottom of the Aegean, so on and so forth?
So going back to a commentary by Robert Hollander, he says, Plutus, the classical god of wealth, not Pluto, the classical god of the underworld. So it is specifically the god of wealth, which makes sense because they are about to enter into the fourth circle, which is associated with greed and
greed and anger.
Yeah, I just posted in side chat.
The hoarders and the wasters is one of the descriptions.
Precisely the same thing.
But also, like, they're vehemently, like, angry, like, with one another in this particular level of hell.
I mean, that makes sense because they're all trying to hoard from one another, so they're constantly in a situation of trying to steal from one another because they're all trying to get their hands on wealth.
Well, see, but here's the thing. When you look at it in the Italian, no, it is Pluto, not Plutus. So, like, I don't give a fuck what Hollander says. This seems like us conflating what we know of a previous god that did talk about wealth, but a different form of wealth, and the way we delineated the wealth of the underworld away from Pluto as he transitioned to Pluto from Hades. Like, there was originally, like, I forget the phrase in Latin now, but there was, like, an old adage about picking up silver off of the ground being bad luck because of stealing from Pluto. Like, this is a thing that was known for some time. And when you look at the Italian, that makes it even more apparent to me because of the aspect that it quite literally says Pluto in Dante's own words. I don't give a fuck what any of the translators say at that point.
Probably just the way Italian endings work. But Pluto and Plutus are two different characters. Like, I just posted something explaining the difference between the two.
And like I said, my information could be outdated, but the Italian isn't. And I'm going to go by Dante's translation there. It's Pluto. And like, it's whether we now interpret it to Plutus is gotta have more context than because I say so.
So Longfellow and Musa both translated as Plutus, and Sayers, although she translated it at Pluto, she says Pluto is the god of wealth that springs from the soil, naturally to be regarded as underground deity from the early times, was apt to be identified with Hades. Dante, however, distinguishes him from Dis, Satan, while making him an infernal power, retains his primitive character as a symbol of riches.
Yeah, so like Sayers is reinforcing what I was taught.
Yeah, so she's calling Pluto. She's distinguishing Pluto from like two. She's saying there's two Plutos. There's one that's the god of Hades, and then there's one that's the god of wealth. And she's saying this is the god of wealth. And then Musa is saying it's Plutus, and Longfellow is saying it's Plutus. We can
And
probably
she
go
already
through all
well,
of
and she already says Pluto. Like we could go through all of them, and I'm guessing it's going to flip flop back and forth based on what they want to interpret it as, and that's what I'm saying. Like
Well, but what they all three agree on is that it's
the god
that
of
it's
wealth,
the god of wealth.
regardless. Yeah. The rest of this is just nuance for anybody who's a nerd like us.
Which makes sense that because the savior, right? That's from earlier, the Greyhound, is differentiated as somebody who does not seek gold and ground,
Yeah.
right? And Plutus would be a representation of someone who, basically a god that represents golden ground.
I may end up having to shave.
Okay. Oh, this is very interesting. So, I'm looking at an Italian commentary about this, which is actually even more recent than the one I was reading previously, in which they separated out where Pluto is the god of wealth and Plutone is the god of the underworld. So the Italian names for these gods are different from the English names of the gods. So where Pluto, or where it says Pluto in Italian, it refers to Plutus, as we would call it in English, and where it says where what we would call Pluto in English would be known as Plutone, who is the child of Saturn and Rhea, aka the god of the underworld.
Yeah, that persuades me for sure.
Well, my issue is the Italian commentary of today. I want to look at is that actually using the contemporary Italian of the time, because we've ran into this issue before, where they'll use modern interpretation of the language to put it in there.
So what's the oldest Italian commentary that you have?
Yeah, that's what I would go
The
by.
oldest Italian commentary that is available, and I'm getting this from the same website that is linked to for the Longfellow translation. That one doesn't specifically mention line, what is it, 115? So I'm going through all of the Italian commentaries which do mention this line, if they have them. And actually, I can also go with the Latin ones.
What's the line? Oh, the very last line.
Yeah, it's the very last line of the canto.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm just looking at it in the Italian, and I'm going to go by whatever the Italian of Dante's day was, because that's what he would have been writing in, obviously.
I mean, any of these scholars would also have the same goal.
But not necessarily the same level of, like, contemporary information of actually speaking the language. Which is why I was trying to go with the oldest one, but we don't have that. At least
Sure, I'm just saying they would
this.
have more than us.
So, just
But,
as a side tangent,
Yeah.
is this where the word plunder comes from?
Etymologically, I don't know, but logically it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, it would, because it's also where we get things like plutocracy, plutomania. So, plunder, I would imagine. I haven't specifically looked it up, but I can. I have a dictionary.
Plunder comes from German plunder, plundum, 17th century.
Okay, it ultimately comes from Frisian, which refers to clothes or things.
Yeah, it's one of those concordant words as opposed to, paraphyletic words as opposed to polyphyletic words.
Yeah, so just
So what is
it's just a
Pluto's
case
mother?
of like convergent etymology where they sound similar but aren't directly related.
Babylon B is a satirical site. Okay, so Jacopo de Alana, he lived from 1320. Well, this was written in 1324 to 28, so he'd be
Very
like
close, yeah.
pretty far back there. And I don't know what it says, but it mentions Pluto Demonio. Don't know what that means.
Where are you? What line is it referencing?
It's actually in 109 to 111, but at the end of it basically says that at the end of the canto, Pluto shows up.
Trovo Pluto Demonio. It's just calling him a demon, basically. Let me get a full translation.
Well, I guess that would make him a great enemy.
Here he puts puts an into the sixth canto, enters the fourth circle, where having entered, found the demon Pluto. So that's not very helpful.
Yeah,
Well,
there's probably no need to explain at that point, right? Because everyone speaks.
Yeah.
Well, no, and then that's kind of my point. If they're talking about the demon Pluto and the god of, therefore the god of wealth and the other god, I don't believe he's trying to distinguish Plutus here, at least in his language. If anything, I would leave this as Dante again trying to leave a multi-layer of meaning in there. Since two aspects of that word do apply to both aspects of negative or mortal sins, one with lust and one being the great adversary of Lucifer himself, therefore worshiping another god before him, as most people view anybody who isn't a Christian as worshiping Satan, so on and so forth. Like this has, at least from the way I'm reading this, going from the oldest commentary to the newest commentary, this just seems like Dante intentionally being ambiguous, like he does in so many other places, to do this very thing of give multi-layers of meaning. Because every one of these layers is contextually relevant to what we're talking about, so it could be any of them. Or all of them.
I should probably get going. Got about 5 minutes. So.
Well, I'm glad we got done with the reading, which is why it's like, all right, let's get this done before we lose you.
We did manage to finish it.
Again, which means this time will probably remain our starting time because it allows us to finish it each time. Even with extended fucking tangents and commentary.
I am extremely happy that we were very prudent with our time.
We're gonna use that in like Canto 80, and people who haven't been paying attention from the beginning are like, "What the fuck is he talking? Why is that funny?"
You know something? I'm going to tell you right now, we're probably going to use that in chats in different places.
But like I said, people are...
And I'm just going to say it, and no one in the chat's even going to know what we're talking about, but we're still going to laugh anyway.
Yeah, it's just... it's one of these things where it's, as we go through this, we have to remember the commentators and translators themselves are working from certain levels of incomplete or skewed knowledge or own personal biases, etc. And we have to remember that when we're talking about Dante, we look at all of his works, this is a man who quite literally tried to pack as much meaning into every single sentence that he put into every fucking thing he ever wrote, that, to ever think he has a singular meaning seems contraindicated from all of the relevant evidence. So, if any of these commentators put some of this down to a singular meaning, that's their interpretation. More than likely, Dante was putting more than one. And that is something that you will have to take into account, especially if you are using this for educational purposes to help you in studying
Who is
Dante.
Proserpina? Proserpina. So another Italian from that same time period basically says, "Oh, this is Persephone." He mentions this.
Proserpina. That would have
Proserpina
to be.
is the Italian name apparently for Persephone.
Wait, where are you getting this commentary? Or Name?
It's the next one. I think it was the one from 1307. I've got to go back and find it. Oh, that's Canto 7.
I was going to say the earliest we have is from Jacopo
This
Alighieri,
is
which I assume is related to.
Anonimo Salmiano.
It's not a direct commentary on Dante, I'm guessing. If it's 1307.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
1337.
Oh, 37.
It's commentary on
Yes.
115 specifically. It's 1337.
Oh, the way it sounded to me when you said it the first time was 1307. I'm like, that's before this was written.
Yeah.
but at least give us context for the word.
Okay, let's see here. So I'm plugging the Italian just into Google Translate for convenience.
Yeah.
Pluto is depicted as avarice and greed, and on the contrary, prodigal and spendthrift. Therefore, Dante torments them together, who, although they sin in different ways, have the same intention there. That is, they gain honor, fame, and power from growing. The miser believes he can spend at his will and acquire friends at his will. The prodigal spends to keep friends and acquire friends, and so they always strike together, as in Canto 7 he speaks. And Boethius speaks of this Pluto, that being Proserpina, which interestingly it doesn't have a translation for, that is a very beautiful damsel. Because of her beauty, she was called Daughter of the Moon, and was called Lucina, probably Lucina, and being in a garden with her mother, Pluto kidnapped her and left her behind. So interestingly, this actually is referring to the mythology of Persephone kidnapping. I'm sorry, of Pluto kidnapping Persephone.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, if any of these commentators, us included, ever try to say that Dante's meaning just one thing,
Yeah.
I have trouble saddling that with what I know of the man. It just doesn't make sense.
Have I got a bridge to sell you?
Yeah, it just doesn't track. And now, don't get me wrong, Sayers, Musa, Hollander, Chiardi, all of these people are giving valuable insight, but insight, not definitive proof of explanation. We're talking about somebody who spoke in metaphor, allegory, and nuance like we use fucking slang. Like, this is a guy that speaks at a different level of linguistics than the average human, even of his time period, let alone modernity.
All right, and with that, I'm going to hop off here. I will talk to y'all later. Take care.
All good. Talk to you later.
And with that, since we won't have too much more bullshit on Canto 6, we'll be talking about a lot of this in